So, as Rishi previously mentioned, we are Geometry Design, and we're gonna give you a brief introduction of what we did throughout this module to get to a final product. So, our module consisted in the merge of mathematics and arts. We took a look at architectural geometry, symmetry, in order to incorporate them into our saris. Saris are a traditional garment worn here in India that consists in a very big fabric ranging between 3 meters and 8 meters that is draped around the body. Each region of India has a different way of draping it, so there's like hundreds, thousands of ways of draping it. Throughout our time here in India, we did several excursions, different like excursions with different people, guest speakers, where we got our inspirations. One of the first one we did was a walking tour around Mumbai city, where we looked at the architecture, the different constructions, styles, as well as visiting temples. We visited the Ravi. We got an introduction into saris, the fabrics that are used in India, as well as natural dyes.
Okay, to explain the math a little bit more, we started off by looking at geometrical constructions, where we learned how to copy parallel lines, understand the congruence between different types of triangles, and justify how we did those things using formal mathematical proofs. We then looked at Vedic math, and more specifically Mandalas and Yantras, and from our guest speaker Vinay, we were tasked to try more complicated constructions using all different sorts of shapes, from triangles, hexagons, to layered circles. As Marily said, one of our excursions was a walking tour, and one of our inside challenges of that tour was to identify 3D and 2D shapes and understand the properties of them to help us see that math inside of design. Here's another example of math and design. One of our activities was this traditional art form, which Admiral will explain, and this is showing how we can find the math inside of our art. And on that side is perspective drawing, and we don't think a lot about the math of it, but we can see that some triangles may look different shapes when they're drawn in perspective. Here's my sari, and the spirals of the leaves are actually constructed using the Fibonacci sequence. And on this diagram, there's the scale measurements, which allow me to sketch it on my paper and then scale it up exactly on my sari.
Thank you so much, Samara. So another key element of our module was the visual arts. And so, can we begin? So some of the techniques and skills that we attained during this module, especially towards the beginning, was sketching. And sketching was going to be very important for us as we were going to sketch our art designs. So we learned different techniques from different artists such as Claude Monet, Pierre Bonnard, and Vincent van Gogh. And we also learned, like Samara touched upon earlier, two-point perspective. Another key element or a really fun activity that we did was a photography walking tour, where we took a walk around the city of Mumbai taking photos of architectural pieces that may inspire our designs. So the main point of this tour was for us to explore using the techniques of photography, the composition techniques such as the rule of thirds, high viewpoint and low viewpoint, leading lines, and frame within a frame. Another activity that we did was Photoshop. So with the photos that we've used from our photography tour, we went onto Photoshop to give a little bit of touch-ups, make it look prettier than they already are. And some of the outcomes that we came up with were really amazing. Another reason why we used Photoshop was because in some of our sari designs, we may need to play around with Photoshop and see which colors we go where or which shapes. So it was a really cool skill that we learned. Now we moved on to the fabric painting, and what happened here is we had a guest speaker, Ms. Varsha, come in and teach us about different techniques of how to paint on a fabric, as well as give us feedback on our sari designs. So these pictures are from our next slide, We Explore. We Explore was a very amazing experience for all of us as a module, as we got to express our creativity, let our designs and our art flow, and we used different techniques. And the main thing that we did in these pieces of art specifically was a technique called Matani Pachadi, which is basically fabric painting symbols or goddesses on these pieces of fabric.
So now, you may wonder, we learned a lot of like skills and everything, but how are we going to implement them into our final design? So I'm going to walk you through my design process for this sari. I did not know exactly which I wanted to focus because there were so many skills we learned. So I decided that I was going to inspire myself on this temple that we visited in Ahmedabad. Of course, art is a way that you interpret the world. You're not going to copy paste this into your final design because it loses its point. So what I decided to do is break them down into geometrical shapes, still keeping some main characteristics like the arches that you can see around the temple. Once I had that, I decided my color palette and started painting. Fabric painting is more complicated than you may think about it, because once you put the paint, there's no going back. So I was halfway through my painting, I was like, okay, we're going good. But then I didn't know how to lay out the different colors to keep the same like theme going on. So I took a photo, passed it into my iPad, and started sketching and figuring out how was I gonna put it. Once I finalized it, and it was ready to go, I started draping in different ways, because as I mentioned you previously, there are hundreds and thousands of ways of draping saris. And this is the final product. But there are several ways we took this project. In this case, Abner inspired himself from different temples, different tiles, and tested out within Photoshop to try out the different colors. We have also his final design, but that's not the end. Seher inspired herself in the tree of life that we can see a lot in temples here in India. She used some geometrical shapes for the background, and she can guide you through her design process furthermore. Then we have Isha. She decided to cover almost her whole sari, which is a big challenge because it's meters and meters of fabric, where she was using mandalas as well as flowers that you can find here in India. Please welcome all of our models with their designs. And we invite yourself, we encourage you to visit us to really get to know our design process, our inspiration, and get to know our challenges. Thank you.